Have you guys seen that, like, Russian state TV is doing, like, a full court press right now for Tulsi Gabbard? They're, like, every outlet they have, they're just pumping out, like, Tulsi is the greatest, Tulsi is great, oh, all of them suck, but Tulsi's good, Tulsi's the good one. We want Tulsi confirmed, get Tulsi Gabbard confirmed, Tulsi, 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 Tulsi. Look at this, Sputnik. Ukraine cleans up its smears against Tulsi Gabbard. The National Security Defense Council of Ukraine has deleted publications accusing Tulsi Gabbard's Trump pick, Director of National Intelligence, working for Russia. Tulsi Gabbard right to pick shake-up U.S. spy agency, CIA veteran. A foreign policy national security appointment that has created considerable dissent is that of Tulsi Gabbard as Director of National Intelligence. The irony of appointing someone intelligent for the U.S. Director of National Intelligence. This is from RT. Tulsi Gabbard is all for promoting peace in Ukraine to calling out warmongering cowards in Washington. Cue panic in the swamp. Man, they're really leaning into the swamps, the Trumpian language, aren't they? Throwback. Tulsi Gabbard placed on Ukrainian kill list. Throwback. Former Democratic Party Congresswoman Representative Tulsi Gabbard called Trump's pick for Secretary of State Marco Rubio a huge mistake as he represents the neocon warmongering establishment of Washington, D.C. The appointment of Tulsi Gabbard as America's new Director of National Intelligence has got all the right people in panic. The ex-Democrat has been accused of, check notes, wanting peace in Ukraine, being against nuclear war, and for calling out the elites of running Washington. Well, no. What I would accuse Tulsi Gabbard of is a few things. Not only of being part of a homophobic cult, but also on top of that, denying Assad's tortures, or at least saying that there was not enough evidence at the time, back in 2015, going and helping the Assad regime do PR with her silly visit, her calling for the Assad regime not to be overthrown. Now, let me be clear about that. When she said, I don't want the Assad regime overthrown, some people will interpret that as, I don't want the Assad regime being overthrown by the United States. No, she didn't say that. She didn't say, I don't want America intervening. She also doesn't want America intervening. She doesn't want the Assad regime to be overthrown at all. After the Assad regime has killed more Syrians than ISIS, and I believe like all of the opposition groups combined, especially if you include the Russian air campaign and the other Hezbollah militias that came in to support them. The footage of the death pits that they made are out there and publicly available. I know some friends who worked on that and got that out to the public. I got to give a good shout out to Patrick Hillsman. Anyway, they're making a full court press for Tulsi Gabbard. Full court press for Tulsi. Oh, wait. I forget that this is a great time to just shit on Tulsi, generally speaking. Tulsi, by the way, at the start of the war, was talking about the Ukrainian biolabs. She was talking about all sorts of nonsense at the start of the war. Like, Tulsi Gabbard, in my mind, when I think about putting anyone at the head of the intelligence agency, I could not think of a worse pick. I honestly could not think of a worse pick. The only worst picks I can think of would be like maybe like Henry Kissinger himself, or like Scott Ritter maybe. Maybe Scott Ritter would be the pick. Maybe that's the way to go. At this point, why are you not just appointing like Scott Ritter, Douglas McGregor, or Jackson Hinkle to be the head of the intelligence? To be the most high-ranking intelligence official in the country. If Scott Ritter would be like 20% worse. Yeah, like 20%. And I don't see what record she even has in intelligence. She was a soldier, but she wasn't like a CIA spy or anything. What does she have to bring to this role? Is it really just the fact that she's a former Democrat and they're going to run on that? A former Democrat that doesn't believe anything that Democrats believe in? And also, let's just throw out there, Tulsi abandoned like everything she believed for the Trump campaign. Where's her stance on Gaza? How is she on the Trump campaign if she's like the anti-war woman on Gaza? You want to know why? Because Tulsi Gabbard's problem hasn't always just been war, generally speaking. She was fine bombing in Syria. She supported the United States joining the Assad regime to bomb Syria. She just believes we were bombing the wrong people. Then instead of going out there and just bombing ISIS, we should have also been bombing rebel-held territory with the Assad regime. And she called out us, the United States, for calling out Russian bombing in Syria. Mind you, the Russians took UN data that the UN gave them to help them not bomb hospitals so they know where they are. It took that, and you know what they immediately did? They bombed 4 hospitals in 12 hours. Like, her record is as bad as it can get. Like, obviously, Trump could pick a lot of weird, like, war hawky bad people that I would not like. But, I mean, she, like, goes out of her way and does loops and flips and turns to just find the worst, disgusting position on any foreign policy issue. Because Gabbard is an amorphous political chameleon, and like you said, she's part of a Hindu nationalist cult. I bet she agreed with Modi and Netanyahu. Like, look, on the Muslim thing, I will say it does seem like the only country she's in favor of bombing are the Muslim ones. I'm just identifying a trend. I'm not saying anything. I'm just identifying a trend. I'm just identifying a trend. I'm just identifying a trend. Here's Russian state TV talking about how much they love Tulsi Gabbard and hate all of the rest of Trump's picks. Trump's continuing to assemble his radical dream team, a team of inexperienced but loyal hawks, ultra-loyalists, as the American media calls them. All of them are young compared to Trump. All of them personally despise Zelensky. They aren't friends with Russia, except, wait. I don't think Mike Waltz despised Zelensky or Marco Rubio despised Zelensky. They've slid in, or even like the host of that Fox show that they're drafting, Pete. I don't even think he hates Zelensky. I think Vivek does, probably, or at least has a disdain. Elon probably slid into disdain, honestly speaking. But they are leaning into like the forever war rhetoric. Sorry, guys. I just wanted to let you guys know that I think Russian state TV is slightly biased. They aren't friends of Russia, except for Tulsi Gabbard. They gotta give her the shout out. They're giving her, like, they're literally, you all suck, except for you. You rock. And just pointing straight at Tulsi. It would be better to help her if you just shut up. Then again, as much as I watch Russian state TV, and I'm like, man, it's crazy they said that. Oh, this could be, oh man, if people in America knew, but they never do. Americans aren't gonna go watch this. This never gets shared around. What the Russian state TV says, it's just me for my little world. They aren't friends of Russia except for Tulsi Gabbard. That's the quote. That's the quote right there. Dylan, why do you watch Russian state TV? Why do you do that to yourself? Because the rest of American media doesn't cover it as much. I want to give you the propaganda that is being consumed in Russia to help give you a perspective on how Russian soldiers can justify to themselves what they're doing, as well as the type of messaging that the government wants to be served to its people. I think that's important. And I do think that, like, propaganda and rhetoric, when it comes to, like, war crimes or the possibility of committing things like genocide, are important to look at. Because when you dehumanize the Ukrainians, and they've had shows on these programs where people talk about, like, drowning Ukrainian children in rivers and, like, crazy stuff. Like, awful, god-awful stuff. Soleniev, their biggest name in news, regularly calls for civilian homes to be bombed and bombed again in places like Kharkiv. His big thing is give a 48-hour warning and then destroy it block by block by block. By the way, if the Russians could, they would have. They just couldn't because they don't have the munitions to do that, and they aren't in range to do that. Maybe if the Kharkiv offensive wasn't so much of a disaster, maybe it would have went differently, but, you know. Director of National Intelligence. She was not, by the way, I remember the footage they put on there for Melania Trump to make her look like a total skank whore, and I'm just being blunt about it. That was the purpose. It was like 2 straight minutes of her nude in skimpy clothing and the most, like, revealing music, the most revealing clothing you can imagine from her time in modeling, while like the Russian state TV hosts are like giggling and smiling and looking at it, and it was very, yeah. I mean, I'm not like a fan of Melania or anything. It's just, but it repulsed me. But then look at the images they use for Tulsi. Hey, look at her. She's just an everyday gal. She was nominated today. She was considered a lobbyist for Putin's interests and blamed of spreading the Kremlin's narrative in the West in exchange for money. And a cherry on top, Trump did not rule out running for a third term. That is true. I didn't talk about this recently, but Trump did say that I probably wouldn't be president again unless they changed term limits. If he comes up with a way to circumvent the Constitution. By the way, when they talk about stuff like this, the reason they're talking about stuff like this is the purpose of it is to show that America is as lawless and cares as little about legal documents like the Constitution as they do. That's the purpose, if you're curious, as to why they would pivot to just talk about this for a moment. Of the United States. Very interesting times are ahead for America, and perhaps for us as well. Even a staunch supporter of Kyiv, Congresswoman Elysy Stefanik, after Trump appointed her to be UN ambassador, distanced herself from her prior position. She declined to answer whether she still wants to see Ukraine in NATO. You know what they didn't include here? They didn't include the fact that she also accused Russia of genocide back in March and April. And now she will no longer comment on that either. The U.S. Justice Department will be headed by a constant critic of the Kyiv regime. I believe. See, they're showing that Matt Gaetz sat down and didn't stand up and clap with the rest of them when Zelensky was speaking. By the way, even if you don't want to send aid to Ukraine, to be clear, he's just like showing disrespect to a country that is under invasion facing mass grave. He just straight up, I can get gained by being a spiteful cunt towards a people being dumped in mass graves, and so I'm going to do it. He's a pure political animal. Florida Congressman Matt Gaetz is one of two American lawmakers who refused to applaud Zelensky after his speech on Capitol Hill. Madam Speaker, I rise to warn of a dangerous bipartisan consensus that's walking us into a war with Russia. Unity always seems to come before the worst decisions. It's ironic that Gaetz, who will head the U.S. Justice Department... By the way, they're talking about it as it's already said and done. And this is a lack of understanding of the domestic American system for Russians, and the fact that Russians don't understand it and they don't need to explain it to them. Matt Gaetz still needs to go through Senate confirmation. Unless, Thune actually goes through with the recess confirmations, which I doubt honestly, I lean towards no, but it's not impossible, Right now, I would say Trump probably is his most bullish after the election. But, they still need to get confirmed by the Senate. Is a critic of this agency. His future subordinates are stunned by Trump's decision, calling it insane. They clearly understand that through Gaetz, Trump will get rid of disloyal prosecutors. The most colorful, and again, look at the way that they can paint it as, look, America doesn't care about law and order. America doesn't care about these institutions. It's all about loyalty and, they can't criticize Russia for much, can they? The most colorful member of Trump's team is the future head of the Pentagon, a 44-year-old veteran of Fox News TV host Pete Hegseth. Looked like he will be the most tattooed official in U.S. history. Hegseth is a committed supporter of Israel, but considers aid to Ukraine a lot less important than dealing with domestic issues in the U.S. By the way, at the start of the war, Pete was 100% like balls to the wall, like we need to support Ukraine now, we need to support them hard. So I don't think it would be impossible for him to shift if he was pushed one way or the other, but it's all up to Trump. And it is true that he shifted away from emphasizing the importance of that support. Reuters announced that under him, there will be a massive purge of the general staff. Another officer on Trump's team, a lieutenant colonel from Hawaii, Tulsi Gabbard. And now they get to show her looking cool, you know, doing like, oh, look at this, she's doing stuff Putin would do. The 43-year-old Gabbard, and when I say that, I mean like the kind of like, look at me, I'm being cool in public, fire gun, ride horse, that type of stuff. The 43-year-old Gabbard is an Iraq veteran and a former congresswoman from the Democratic Party, which she left in 2022. She will be the director of the Office of National Intelligence, which coordinates the work of all 17 U.S. intelligence agencies. Future head of the it's Texas fast. The future head of American National Intelligence criticized the Kyiv regime even before the start of the conflict. She is blaming Biden for starting this war. The United States is waging a proxy war against Russia. They can't define victory. Anytime someone asks, President Biden or someone in his administration, where does it end? Where does it end? They throw around this cheap one-liner. Well, that's up to Putin, whenever Putin stops it. Tulsi, who condemns the Kyiv regime and advocates the normalization of relations with Moscow, was accused of spreading Russian propaganda in 2022 by Ukraine's Center of Countering Disinformation. Well, yeah, because she did. We know this well. Our president, our supreme commander-in-chief, spoke about this more than once. We're fighting the collective West, not Ukraine. It means we must force the collective West to carry out our will. That's it. Let them interpret it however they want. They seem excited for the potentiality. Oh, also, cherry on top, Trump's not going to have an FBI background check for Tulsi Gabbard. And it's not for all of the picks, by the way. It's for two. Matt Gaetz and Tulsi. If there's anybody that Trump is appointing that needs a FBI background check more than anyone, it is Tulsi Gabbard. I don't want them to think that we're a bunch of Elons. Trump Tower in Tehran? What a reversal.